Well, if you remember back when I covered my N-gauge purchase, this was one of the little tank locos that hadn't fared so well. Upon taking it apart, we were missing one coupling, and they're the two carbon brush springs, and the one, if we can just about pick it up, one half of a carbon brush, which was why it wasn't running at all, was because it only had one, and oops, and they need two. You see, you can't even get them in shot, they're that small. Yeah, so we took it apart and left it like that until I got the parts. I had the inspiration last night to do it. One of my late night projects again, and it proved to be far from straightforward. First off, I reassembled it all, and it ran. Well, the motor ran, but the gears kept dropping out of mesh. Turned out that the motor wasn't quite seated in the casting frame, so I repositioned it, put it all back together again, then it wouldn't run. There was too much tension in the fitting of the motor at the frame, and it was throwing something out of alignment, and the armature was binding slightly. It moved, but it was under so much resistance it wouldn't make the wheels go round. The motor was humming and getting hot, and it took me absolutely ages. I think I spent an hour trying to crack the nut, as it were. So eventually the problem was tracked down to a couple of things, which I didn't film because obviously it was getting 2 o'clock in the morning. So I will just do a narration with some picture stills. So this is the armature. The initial problem was where you can see the tweezers pointing to the little nylon bush housing. This was kept falling out of the frame, so I gave it a little tap of super glue and proceeded to put it all back together again, put all the carbon brushes on. So it was still binding. This took several attempts to reassemble the thing, and it was getting quite frustrating, and it just was not working. There was power going into it. I measured out the contact surfaces of the commutator, cleaned them out just to make sure there wasn't any shorts. They all came up with the same resistance, but it still seemed to be a lot of resistance with the motor turning, so it had to be one of these was binding. There's one each end of the motor, but the problem was that kept falling out. So I went back to, obviously I'd glued it in place, but I thought the armature, the commutator, seemed a little bit out of position for where the brushes sat. So I put my thumb each side of the end and pushed it up slightly, so it's now closer to the bush housing, so it can't fall back out again even if the glue should fail. So we looked at the communicator, then we reassembled it. This is a picture of it back in the chassis with the top brush mounted back in. So the contact plate goes underneath the chassis and is held only by this one nut and screw. So I found that just easing it in from one set of axles, nipping the contactors in and slowly putting them in place, moving the axles just to gain access, give them enough space to fit in. It was quite fiddly. I left this nut and screw loose. You can see the underside of it there. That's the only attachment point. To get the couplings in, leaving it loose allowed me to sort of prise the tip open, drop the spring in, and then go in at a 45-degree diagonal angle with the coupling, and just then twist it to the horizontal plane, and the cover would click back in place, and that would hold the coupling in. The rear end I could attach with the screw that holds it to the body into the chassis, but the other end, the screw goes all the way through. If you put the spring in, this then fouls the access hole for the screw that attaches through the chassis to the body and holds the whole thing in place. Whether it's supposed to have a spring in it or not, I don't know. There does seem to be a bit of resistance with the springs when you're trying to couple something up, as I've just sort of tried on the mat at the moment. But if you put the screw through first, then place the spring in as I've just shown you in the last shot, then again with the coupling diagonally, and click it back in place, then you can attach the body. You can see the screw through the chassis there, then reattach the body. Back end goes on first to cab end, then bring the front up and align the screw, and just screw it in, and you're done. But it took me several attempts to get it all done and effectively run. And the other thing you've got to remember is to make sure the conrods are round the right way. But all I've done so far is tested it with a couple of wires onto the wheels. We haven't tested it on track, so we're going to christen that little layout. So here goes the inaugural use of the track and running in the loco. Seems to be a few dead spots. Well, cleaning the track a bit with a piece of timber. See the grooves in the end there. It's done the job. As you can see, it's slightly improved the running. Still a little bit sporadic, but up until the separation, which I think is caused by these little weights, wheel weights that have been added into the chassis. Unfortunately, the positioning of them is slightly a bit too close to the wheels, so where there's the little pip on the mould, they sometimes scratch and drag, or they'll even lock up. It's free at the minute, so they just need either the weights repositioning. Hopefully the glue's not too much of a bugger to get off, and reposition them just a little bit. Maybe file them slightly. There's about 3 of them there. There's another one you can see right there where my finger is. It's literally flange of the wheel is dragging on that weight. But minor problems, minor problems. Same there again, that's right on the edge, unfortunately. But nothing major. So the old girl's got some life in her. Probably benefit from a bit of a wheel clean, but that middle one's got a bit of grunge on it. But yeah, she's working. Got cast body as well. It's not plastic. There's quite a bit of weight to it. As you can see, it managed to pull that fair rake of wagons, which is about all I've got in this lot. I have got a few others that I've picked up over time, but yeah, it's just going to add another element to me to have to plan. Trying to incorporate an N gauge layout within the 00, or having a separate layout in the room, you know, either being a separate board or a line on the lower level that would be an N gauge. Two worlds, one size and one the other, or maybe incorporate them, I don't know. We'll have to let imagination sort that out nearer the time. Cheers for now.